With Caitlin Clark out for the WNBA All-Star Game, all eyes turned to the rest. This was their moment, their chance to show they deserved the spotlight and the big paychecks they've been chasing. On the court, they delivered the message loud and clear. But the fans, they had something to say too, and it was just as powerful. Yet, ESPN would rather you didn't hear it. The viewership numbers dropped, and once again, ESPN is stepping in, shielding the league and its stars.
It's fine to just say, just post the ratings. But, like, it is another situation than pretending like Caitlin Clark doesn't exist.
Caitlin Clark's fans didn't stay quiet. They called it out instantly, because this isn't the first time someone's tried to dim her light or downplay her impact. But this time, after what just unfolded on the court, that strategy is blowing up in a big way. So let's break it down. But first, if you're done with ESPN smoke and mirrors, hit that like button. And subscribe if you want real talk on Caitlin Clark and all things WNBA. Now, ESPN has this pattern whenever Caitlin Clark's name comes up alongside viewership. They are not flat out lying, but they are definitely not telling you the full truth either. What they do instead, cherry picking. They grab numbers that are technically accurate, but only the ones that push the narrative they are trying to spin. And with Caitlin, it's the numbers they leave out that speak even louder. Here's a perfect example. After the 2025 WNBA draft, ESPN couldn't wait to announce that viewership had jumped 119%. Sounds like a huge win for the league, right? But take a closer look and something feels off. That jump? It's compared to 2023. So why leave out 2024? Anyone who works in media or marketing will tell you, you always compare year over year. This year versus the last. Not this year versus 2 years ago. And here's the thing, this isn't just a one-time trick. They pulled the exact same move during March Madness in 2025. For the second round, the Sweet 16, and the Elite 8, all those matchups were compared to 2023. Now, yes, Caitlin did play in that 2023 tournament. So at first glance, it feels like a fair comparison. But the second they hit the Final Four and the national title game, boom, 2023 disappeared. Suddenly, they stopped referencing it altogether. Instead, they just tossed out third highest ever, which sounds impressive until you realize the 2 years ahead of it were 2023 and 2024. Both years Caitlin Clark made the Final Four. What would happen if they actually gave us the full picture? They'd have to admit something big, that viewership dropped by over 10 million. And that's why they only compare to Caitlin's numbers when they outperform her. When they don't, silence. And let's be real, that's not an innocent mistake. That's intentional. The funniest part? They honestly believe fans won't notice. Like if they toss around enough flash of stats, people will just assume women's basketball is breaking records, even without Caitlin Clark. But in reality, that spin job just makes it even more obvious. It's the Streisand effect in full swing. When you try to hide something, and all you do is shine a brighter light on it, that's exactly what ESPN is doing right now. And Caitlin's fans, they see it instantly. They call it out every single time. Because every stat that gets bent, every awkward dodge, every spin, only proves one thing. Caitlin Clark is the reason this sport is growing. And clearly, some folks don't want that truth getting out. But here's the kicker. It's not just ESPN. It's bigger. It's a problem baked into the whole WNBA ecosystem. Because every single time the league, the players, or the media try to water down Caitlin's influence, they don't dim her. They reveal themselves. And honestly, at this point, it's turning into a comedy. Remember when Caitlin Clark was named Times Athlete of the Year? The backlash was instant. Not because she didn't earn it, but because, somehow, the entire league supposedly did. People actually argued that all WNBA players should be featured on the cover. Like it was a group participation trophy. Funny, right? That standard only shows up when it's Caitlin. Because when AJA Wilson, Brianna Stewart, or Nafisa Collier get featured by Time or Sports Illustrated, nobody's asking for a team photo, and it didn't stop there. Caitlin won an ESPY, and her own coach couldn't even publicly celebrate her without immediately redirecting the praise to the rest of the league.
Noticed or heard about it, but during the game, Caitlin got honored as the WNBA Player of the Year in the ESPYs. Just what does it mean to have her impact so far? I mean, there are a lot of really good players in this league, and she got honored as the best player in the league by the ESPYs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously she continues to get new awards. She continues to break barriers. She continues to do things that we haven't seen before. I mean, you know, obviously you think about the Stewie's MVPs of the league, and you know, championship winners, and Asia's MVPs of the league and championship winners, and of course Sue Bird, who was sitting, you know, in the building today. And you know, Caitlin is so fortunate, as well as all these guys, really. I mean, that they don't know anything any different than the WNBA.
That's how fragile everything around her has become. Even giving her credit feels like a political move. And when the media finally admits Caitlin's popularity, it's never just because she owned it.
I just said we would not be talking about Caitlin Clark the way that we do if it wasn't for that moment with Angel Reese. And I will die on this hill. I will die on this hill.
I was with you until that.
I will die on this hill. I will die on this hill.
They always say it's because of something else. A rivalry, a headline, a moment. Anything but the player actually moving the needle. And the second they admit she has millions of fans, suddenly those fans become the problem.
The new fans are sucking life out of the WNBA right now.
I'll start with you, Kels, because Lord Jesus, your team and their fans,
Jesus,
they be getting up in everybody's business.
I think so many fans, you know, feel they have the freedom to say whatever they want to us, and unfortunately, there's a lot of nasty things that come with it. You know, they don't have people coming to their job saying these nasty things. So, yeah, we definitely have to protect the players better.
And then it escalates. Caitlin's fans aren't just passionate. Now they're toxic or hateful or even racist. Suddenly, it's not that they support her. It's that they don't support Paige Bueckers because she speaks up for social justice. Or that Caitlin should have picked Angel Reese in the All-Star draft, not because of basketball, but just to manage her fan base. Even the Phoenix Mercury jumped in, posting a not-so-subtle message suggesting Indianapolis isn't safe for players. It's surreal. This whole ecosystem, the league, the players, the media, they're working to downplay the one athlete fueling their growth and vilifying the fans who made it possible, and they know it. But protecting their pride matters more. Because letting go of control, that's terrifying. Which is ironic. The moment Caitlin's fans stop watching, the control vanishes. And for the players, right now, the control is everything today in the middle of a high-stakes CBA fight, hoping to lock in big money from an upcoming media rights deal. And let's be real, that deal, it's almost entirely riding on Caitlin Clark. But behind closed doors, the fear is real. Because the owners know this league runs on Caitlin. Without her, ratings and ticket sales don't just dip, they collapse.
I can't imagine, folks, you know how many NBA players can get injured? And the prices would never drop to this low. LeBron James can be injured, Steph Curry could be injured, Kevin Durant could be in, and the prices still will not drop to be this low. $75? Folks, I'm sure there's some high school football teams down in Texas that charge you at least $75 to get to a home game.
So, when Caitlin Clark was ruled out of the All-Star game, it put the players in a brutal spot. This was supposed to be the marquee moment, the league's brightest spotlight, and suddenly, they were on their own. No Caitlin, no automatic ratings boost. Just the players, and a chance to prove they could own the moment without her. But right from the start, things unraveled. Ticket prices dropped 48% the second her absence was announced. And that raised the real question, how bad would it get? Could they pull off a miracle without her? Or would the numbers finally reveal just how deep the reliance truly runs? Well, the ratings are in. And ESPN, full damage control.
3-point contest. ESPN, ABC, and Disney score the historic viewership for the 2025 WNBA All-Star events. Friday, July 18th, ESPN airs the most watched WNBA skills and 3-point contest ever, averaging 1.3 million viewers, which is up 89% versus last year's WNBA skills and 3-point contest, up 89%.
The weekend actually kicked off with promise. The skills competition and 3-point contest saw a big spike in viewership compared to 2024, a great sign for the league. For a moment, it looked like the players might really pull it off. Maybe they didn't need Caitlin Clark on the court to break records. But then, just like clockwork, ESPN slipped right back into their usual playbook.
All-Star Game ratings from this past weekend was the second most watched WNBA All-Star Game ever, behind 2024. No surprise there. The 2025 WNBA All-Star Game was the most watched program of the night across all of TV. The night, not the day. With 2.2 million average viewers, up 158% from the 2023 WNBA All-Star Game.
Did you catch it? They compared this year's All-Star Game ratings to 2023, the year before Caitlin Clark even entered the league. Even though, just a few lines earlier in the same post, they were comparing the skills competition to 2024. So why the sudden shift? Gee, I wonder. Maybe it's because last year's All-Star Game, the one that featured Caitlin Clark, brought in 3.4 million viewers. This year, 2.2 million. That's a 36% drop. 1.2 million viewers. Gun. And instead of acknowledging that, they buried it. Imagine saying Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the NBA's all-time scoring leader, but then slapping on a little asterisk that says, except for LeBron. That's what this is. A deliberate move to dress up numbers in a way that sounds impressive, without actually telling you what happened. Because most people, they are busy. They see 2.2 million and up 158% and assume the league's blowing up. They don't have time to dig deeper, and ESPN counts on that. So yes, the numbers are technically true, but the framing, it's built to mislead, to paint this year's All-Star Game as, get this, historic.
Not this is historic. Like they were like, scored historic viewership. How is it historic when it's like half of last year? Last year was nearly 4 million. How is it historic when it's like half of last year?
And here's where ESPN really slipped, because instead of calming the storm, their spin made it worse. It backfired hard. The Streisand effect kicked in. Suddenly, everyone caught the 2023 comparison trick, and no one missed it.
Well, Uncle KC, ESPN was comparing this year's All-Star Game to 2023. Why? Why in the hell would they do that? I'll tell you why ESPN did this. This is another example of the mainstream media protecting the WNBA. This is another example of ESPN polishing the turd with this dump of a league.
Here's the thing, 2.2 million viewers is actually strong for a WNBA All-Star Game. But the drop, 36% lower than last year's record with Caitlin Clark, makes her impact impossible to deny. And honestly, it makes what the players did over All-Star Weekend feel a little off. They stood tall, wore protest shirts, demanded, pay us what you owe us. They turned a fan event into a statement about value. And here's the truth. It was a high-stakes bet in the court of public opinion. And this time, it backfired.
The WNBA players in their pregame warm-up came out in these T-shirts, pay us what you owe us. And then immediately pivoted to playing the worst All-Star game in the history of professional All-Star games. They took the court in T-shirts. Pay us what you owe us. We're underpaid. This league has lost millions of dollars, but we're underpaid. Pay us what you owe us. And then they served up a doo-doo sandwich to sports fans.
And then came the cherry on top, Kelsey Plum. At the post-game press conference, she took a shot at Caitlin Clark and her camp, hinting they didn't care enough to even meet about the protest T-shirts.
The T-shirt, just United Front, was determined this morning that we had a meeting for, and not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that. But no, we were just we had a very that really needed to be mentioned.
She said that in Indy, Caitlin's home market, after an event that was supposed to bring the league together, it was a wild misstep. Instead of praising Indiana for hosting a record-breaking weekend, Instead of celebrating the sold-out crowd, the city, or the fans, she took aim at the one player actually giving the league the leverage to demand more. Kelsey and others tried to laugh it off as a joke, but Caitlyn's fans, the same ones about to pour more money into these players' pockets, didn't take it that way. And NBA champ and broadcaster Stacey King, he said what everyone else was thinking.
Quote, as you're fighting for better salaries, you're portraying a united front at your biggest event, you still find a way to throw shade at Caitlin Clark. Why? Stacey King posted. Quote, look at Sabrina's reaction to Plum's comment. It says a lot. Some of these girls are really petty, and someone needs to explain to them it's hurting their league, and it's sad to see. He's not wrong.
With the rough performance on the court and Kelsey's off-court comments, WNBA players couldn't afford another misstep. A 36% drop in ratings, that would have been the dagger. So ESPN calling it a historic event, that was a lifeline they needed. But all of this, it's just public perception. Behind the scenes, the owners, they see right through it. And if you scratch even a little beneath the surface, they're probably the first ones to admit it's worse than it looks, because if Caitlyn had actually played, not just sat on the bench, it likely wouldn't have just matched last year's $3.4 million. It would have crushed it. Just look at this season. When Caitlyn steps on the floor, ratings explode. Her games against the Sky, the Liberty, and the Sun, some of the most watched WNBA broadcasts in decades, pulling in 2.7 million, 2.2 million, and 1.7 million viewers. So realistically, if Caitlyn had suited up for the All-Star game, we're not talking about 3.4 million. We're talking well over 4 million, which means this wasn't just a 36% drop. It was a 50% loss in potential. And here's the part that really blows your mind.
Even without Caitlin Clark, it was the second highest rated WNBA All-Star game ever, and that is a huge point of distinction. Two things are clear. If Caitlin Clark plays in the All-Star game, it will set records. But now, because of her popularity, even if she doesn't, it will break records and be the second highest ever. Only beaten by the time she played in. And that matters.
Instead of comparing it to 2023 to make it sound like some historic night, why not just say what everyone already knows? Because of the Caitlin Clark effect and all the new fans she's brought in, you just had the second most watched All-Star game in history. And she didn't even play. Just say it. Admit the Caitlin Clark effect is real. That it's fueling the league's growth. And right after that, say thank you. Thank the new fans. Welcome them in. That's all they want, not the gaslighting. Not the subtle jabs at Caitlyn after the game, hinting she didn't support the protest message, when she's literally the backbone of everything the players are fighting for. Here's the truth. The players are going to get more money. That's happening. No doubt. Even though the league's operated at a loss for years, team values have doubled since Caitlyn arrived. The owners see it. They have every reason to invest. They don't want a lockout, and neither should the players. But here's the thing. They could get even more if they embrace the people making all of this possible. If they stopped pushing away the fans. If they stopped pretending Caitlin Clark isn't the reason everything's growing. Because the more they resist the Caitlin Clark effect, the more obvious it becomes. And the longer Caitlyn remains the only player those new fans actually care about, Dud, if you're still here, drop it in the comments, because that's what you are. Thanks for watching. See you next time.